Top of the morning to you, and welcome to the Upload VR Gamescast. I have no idea why I opened with that. Let's just say it was because it was St. Paddy's Day last week. I'm one of your hosts, JB Feltham, and with me is the illustrious Harry Baker.
Hello, everybody. Top of the evening for you. It's evening for me. So I don't know. Bottom of the evening. How does that work? What's the old?
I guess.
Yeah, that's it. There we go.
Welcome to the show.
You started this.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the Irish episode. It's great to see you all here. As usual, we want to give a big shout out to our members to kick the show off. They include Elaine Grass, Anthony Mann Wexford, Robert Canono's ×2, Handy Panama, Daniel Bowen, Jerome Houston, Andrew King, Skiva 007, Sexy Bicycle, Matthew May, Rick Tet, 360 Pickleball, Smash Reality, Adam Hartle, the Absolute Boy, and John Westra. Thank you so much for being members. You can be a member too. You can toss some bucks our way. That's always good. You know, it keeps the lights on. I mean, this is a VR studio. The lights are always on anyway, but it keeps us charging our quests, I guess you should say.
Keeps us charging our quests. Yeah.
Harry, no one's done anything stupid in the metaverse this week, as far as I can tell. So that
I'm sure someone has.
Yeah, I'm sure someone.
I'm sure there's something. I think there's about 15 metaverse emails in my inbox a day, but nothing on the level of Snoop Dogg. So
I'm sure. Yeah, true. And I'm sure when I say no one's done anything stupid in the metaverse, I'm sure if you were go into VR chat now, you could probably find over 1 million arrestable offenses, but we won't get into any of that.
Or Gorilla Tag. I feel like Gorilla Tag is the new VR chat 10-year-old hangout. I see people talking online about people they know who are in Gorilla Tag like it's VR chat. Like they're just hanging out. Man, that is a game that I cannot. I don't know. I was not good at it.
I don't want to feel like behind the times and that I'm not, down with the youth. but I watched a video of the new Gorilla Tag map being played by some YouTuber, and he met up with a bunch of kids, and they were like, "Dude, this map is so sick!" Just sliding down this ice slide, going
PS1 looking graphics.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, I have respect for this because I actually think the way the game is played is pretty cool.
Oh, the movement is very cool. Good. But it's
incredible.
I had to describe it to someone the other day who I had just described Echo VR to, and I said, then there's this Gorilla game, and it has the same movement, but it's in real gravity. So you just kind of have to really work a lot harder with trees instead of zooming yourself through.
Real artificial gravity.
Yeah, it's like slow Echo VR.
I feel no, there's just no hope. I would love to get into Gorilla Tag in the name of knowing everything that's great and good about VR, but some things have just been claimed.
It's strenuous too. It takes a lot of exercise. It's a workout.
Yeah, it does.
The kids have energy. They have energy for that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not talking Gorilla Tag anymore today, don't worry. Unless it's in the news, but I can't remember that happening. The first thing we're talking about today is an overhaul for one of VR's most popular horror games. I am, of course, talking about Phasmophobia. Last week, we saw a kind of gameplay video posted of an upcoming VR overhaul update. Obviously, the game mainly played in flat screen mode, but has always had optional VR support, but it's always kind of been just the bare bones implementation of VR support in a lot of ways. Harry, I know you like Phasmophobia, I believe.
Oh, that's a strong word. I'm pretty, when it comes to horror, I'm pretty so-and-so. It depends on the game. I've only played, the only time I've actually played this, and I haven't played it in VR, I played it with David. We did a stream back when David was with us. He was in VR and I was playing normally, so I could check on chat and kind of do stuff. So I've played it, but not in VR. But I've seen enough of it to know that the VR stuff was very not limited, but as you said, just kind of it was the bare minimum. This looks better, although I'll admit I some of the stuff I can't tell the difference. I'm sure to people stuff like simulated crouch obviously is useful. Stuff with the hand posing and stuff like that, I haven't played it enough to kind of fully I can tell it's better, but I don't exactly. I couldn't point to things and be yeah. But I don't know. It's one of those things that I'm sure fans of the game will be very happy. I saw some people. There was a thing on Twitter with someone who responded being "Oh, it's a bit disappointing. Still floating hands. We really want a full body." And they actually ended up replying to that, and they were like, well, we are going to do like a full IK body thing, but that's a lot more work than we want to do now. Because I think they said they were going to overhaul all of the bodies, I think maybe regardless of like VR or not VR. So that'll come with that. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's nice that they're clearly putting this out as like, this is the VR. We're putting like concerted effort into that specifically.
Because the thing is, like, this is such a popular phenomenon of a game, like, and has been for the past couple of years on Steam. So it's always, to me, it's been like, when we're doing our best of lists and when we're talking about our favorite like PC games and stuff like that, should we be talking about Phasmophobia? And I've always thought we kind of get let off the hook on the fact that the VR support's not fully there, but now it's there. Maybe it needs to start coming. Well, hopefully when it's there, it will need to start coming into that conversation more.
I know it's way more work than like what they're doing with this too, but I do also wish that this came to Quest with crossplay as well. I feel like if Quest players could play this with the PC players exactly as Steam VR players can do now, that'd be awesome, because you'd have so many, like, especially we're talking about like kids, Gorilla Tag or whatever. I know like there are kids that play this and love this. People who are like teenagers who already play this, who have friends who will play it with them on a computer. I think it's that'd be also a really good selling point of like, oh, our friend is the one friend is in VR and he's getting way more scared. It's a good one to kind of, I think there's more potential there than something like Demio, where there's their PC version that's coming out. It's not out yet, I don't think. But like, I don't know, that different scenarios where I feel like this is a way better game. You would see someone playing it in VR and be like, oh, I really want to do that. I'm not sure you get the same from doing that with like Demio, but I'm still glad that the PC version is, it's a thing. It's
totally one of those things that if there was a rumor it was coming to Quest, the next UploadVR showcase, the comment section would just be right, Phasmophobia, and it'd be like, no, stop, we don't have that one. Please stop. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it would be a huge, very significant Quest game, and I think it could be definitely done in terms.
It doesn't
of,
look impossible, like graphically.
No,
no. Yeah.
If you consider even from other indie devs, we recently got stuff like, Vox Machina and stuff like that, which pulled off a very competent port. You could I feel quite confident I reckon you could do that.
I mean, I'm also getting to the point where, and I think I said this in, which we'll talk about a bit later, some impressions I gave on Startenders, but like we're getting to the point where there's enough things that look really good on Quest where you can kind of go, okay, we know this is the bar now. Like, there's not just one or two things. Like, there are a few high-level things that look really good. Something like this should be able to... You can make it work somehow. And obviously, it's different when you're not building something for Quest first, porting it over from an existing thing. But, I don't know, I think we're getting to a point where you can kind of tell this kind of thing should be able to run. There's other bigger and better things on that platform now.
Yeah, you're right. Like, Resident Evil 4 really was that bar, and The Walking Dead, really. In terms of, I'm sure both
The Walking Dead I feel like was a turning point, right?
Yeah, and I'm sure it had like unbelievable resources poured in behind it by people at Meta being like, we need these headsets, we need these games on this headset. But I think Phasmophobia would totally be in that category, and I wouldn't, I wouldn't be surprised if they're talking on some front or another.
This is the kind of update you would do in advance of that, so fingers crossed.
Exactly, yeah. That is enough Phasmophobia. It's time for a game we rarely ever mention on the UploadVR Gamescast. A little VR MMO called Zenith or Zenith. There's Alex and Skiva did an interview with them at GDC this weekend with the Zenith or Zenith guys, and they have a question in the full cut of the video about whether it's called Zenith or Zenith, and I can't remember what the CEO answered. I'm pretty sure it's Zenith. But
Zenith, you reckon? Oh, interesting. I would definitely go with Zenith.
Yeah, maybe it is. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I don't know. They've raised Ramen VR has raised another $35 million. This is in addition to, I think it was $10 million they raised last year. The studio is planning to double in size as it continues to build out the game. I am quite amazed at the pace we're seeing this studio grow. It's kind of insane, right?
The amount we've covered this since launch, in terms of like the stuff that's come into our like Slack that's worth covering. We've gone, there's more Zenith news. Like, it's been what, 2 months, if that, not even been less than 2 months. And I feel like we've
just
put
under.
out so many. There's been so much news, like funding aside, even just like content, funding, studios now doubling. All of this stuff is like there's been so much kind of going on.
Because my fear with it, right, was that we were all just going to be caught in this bubble, and this was something I was intensely trying to focus on as I was playing the game back in January and throughout February. Was, am I just getting swept up in the hype of finally having a VR MMO, and really this thing's a bit rubbish? And I came down on the idea that actually it's not rubbish; it's very, very rough, but there's lots of great content here, and I had a great time running through it, either soloing or playing with other people. And there was a lot of undeniable magic to that. But really the game is going to live and die by what they bring to it next, because it still is an early access game at the end of the day. Like on PC, it is officially an early access game. Then PSVR and Quest don't label things that way, but really it is. And again, Alex and Skiva from Between Realities were talking to Andy, the CEO of Ramen VR at GDC, and he went a bit more into what they're expecting to do with the next content update, the first major one, which is to focus on dungeons, and dungeons that have elements of like environmental gameplay mechanics.
That was really interesting, I think.
Yeah, he said a lot more like parkour kind of things if you really enjoyed that in the main game, which is the stuff that I thought was very interesting about Zenith. Like the side objectives that were, you have a limited stamina bar, and here's this kind of assault course that you've got to climb, because that is the kind of stuff you don't usually see in an MMO. So
I think that's the right answer he gave to that question, because it's kind of like what we've been talking about, where because he was basically like, oh, normal MMOs, like a dungeon you go through, you're like shooting things at mobs, then you get to like a raid boss, and you know, at the end of the dungeon you do that, and that's that. And the environment is just something you run through. He was like, no, we want it to be more like environment stuff, like you get a feeling of like scope, you're seeing cool things, you're doing things in the environment, more puzzles, which is what we've been talking about in terms of like, this isn't just, they clearly have got the message of like people like these specific VR things, the things that make them feel present. So I think I was happy to hear that, instead of, you know, it just being like, well, there's gonna be some raid dungeons, you know, shoot at mobs, a bit like this, like shoot, move along, shoot. So yeah, I'm good. And they also said in that same interview, which I thought was interesting, he said they're aiming for major content update quarterly and minor content update or minor update monthly, which is interesting.
Yeah, it seems pretty ambitious, right? But I mean, that's where this investment is going to go, bringing in that team. You know, it's kind of this, and now it's after the fall in terms of 2 live service VR games that are just we're going to be expecting that kind of significant new drop from pretty much around the clock. And after the fall is obviously from Vertigo, which is it's a small team, but it's a very well funded team. You know, recently got bought by Koch Media. Yeah, had the success with Arizona Sunshine, has its various publishing arms that it's also no doubt helping out with. But to me, that is a team that's established enough to deliver on what we said about that game of, a year from now, we want to see way more content, way more variety in the content. And that was always going to be the test with Ramen VR was, sure, you can make this kind of like big open world. You can have lots of servers and lots of players on it. You can have these simple fetch quests. And yes, they're really, really fun to do in VR, but are you actually going to grow this into something that is like, Zenith is unquestionably the definitive VR MMO, and it's got loads of features you can't really replicate in a normal MMO. And with this money, it seems like they could get there.
Totally. And it's one thing to, I think, also as a particularly, you know, new dev team, or like, and someone unlike Vertigo don't have that kind of breadth of experience. I think it's one thing to build up to a date and then release like the early access, or like, this is the release date we're aiming for, because you can take kind of as long as you want to then determine that date and be like, this is the date. Then you all of a sudden, every point past there, you're like, well, we're working in quarterly kind of update cycles, you know, and then it's like, it's a whole different ballgame at that point, because, you know, you've got people to kind of, you've got players, as opposed to just indefinitely kind of, you can develop for as long as you want and then be like, okay, we're going to make this date now. It's like, now they've got it's make or break this year.
Yeah. I wouldn't object to one of those quarterly updates just being a massive quality of life thing as well. Like, go all the way back through
Polish
everything you've built so far. Yeah, make sure that chests aren't just floating in the middle of the air. Make sure that text in like all the text of the game is properly formatted, no typos or anything. Because like even here we're seeing it spill out of the like tutorial menu, and like I'm sure a lot of that stuff has been fixed as they go forward. But I'm really looking forward to that time where it's kind of out of early access, I guess, and it's not such a rough prospect anymore, and you don't have to say to people, "Oh yeah, absolutely try Zenith." But
I was just gonna say that, or you could show it to someone and not be like, "Oh, ignore the text; it's overflowing," or this is like having to like explain. It's like, "Oh, it's early. Like, don't judge the kind of bugginess of it." Yeah, totally.
Cool. Can you hear like that engine sound coming from me? I think there's a giant truck outside, but if you can't hear it, it's not
at all. No.
Moving on from Zenith, we have kind of a new game to be announced. I say kind of a new game. It is a full new game, but it was announced very, very quietly, so much so that it flew under the radar, if you will. This is Warplanes Battle Over Pacific, which is a sequel to the World War I fighters game that was pretty popular basically last summer. Came out through SideQuest and everything like that before finding its way onto the Oculus Store, and it was on PC as well. And was a game we were all pretty fond of just because it was such a versatile experience that let you jump into a bunch of different World War I cockpits, fly pretty much how you wanted to fly. You could use a virtual joystick, or you could use, touch control, analog sticks, or anything like that. And then there was, a campaign that also had full co-op support, user-generated missions, progression structure, pretty much everything you would want from this kind of experience, except maybe, like if it was a more of a AAA production, then you'd have some high production values, and that would be something that people would really, really like as well. However, it was, big success, and I'm surprised to see a sequel so quietly announced on Steam coming out at some point this year. It's, as the name suggests, it's going to be set in World War II. It will still have multiplayer and co-op options, and I think it's launching in early access first. I would have thought this would have been a bigger deal.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I think they said they want to launch by Q3 this year, end of Q3, and they expect early access to be before that potentially. I think.
Right. Okay. Cool.
So maybe mid-year you might be able to get in. I mean, let's be honest. It doesn't look that different from. If you showed me this, look, I know my wars. Like I've studied a lot of history, but I don't know the planes like specifically. If you showed me these and you showed me the other trailer, I probably wouldn't know. Like,
well, I think
which is not necessarily a criticism, but it's like
I think the thing is, if you remember in the World War I, you did have a lot of hand-based aiming with actual guns and stuff like that. Whereas this will be a lot more automated, a lot more up to date on what you'd expect, a lot more gunny. Yes. But I'm really happy to see it's happening. We're getting spoiled for choice when it comes to flight combat games at the moment. Obviously, I'm such a fan of Ultra Wings 2, which was out earlier this year and is coming to PC pretty soon as well, hopefully. These two are kind of going head to head now, aren't they, in terms of like the VR flight combat space? Obviously, in terms of the highest fidelity and everything like that, Flight Sim takes the crown, but these two are kind of duking out for quest dominance, I guess you'd say.
The one nitpick I have with this, like what I'd like to see from the sequel, because I've only played bits and pieces of the first one, and I had like an experience, like would have been a couple of months ago, like around Christmas. I was back home with the family. My dad has a quest, I have a quest, and for some reason, my dad had seen this on the store page. And to be clear, he only uses his headset mainly to play like 11 with me on a blue moon. Like he doesn't investigate the store. Had seen this, like the first one, and was like, oh, I've got like a discount code. I'm going to buy that and try that. That looks interesting. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, I can jump in and we can try and do some multiplayer. And he had never tried the game before. There was like all I wanted to do was like jump into it and just press multiplayer and explain to him on the go and just like put him in the back of the plane shooting and have me in the front or whatever, and just kind of get into it. But it was like the opening, because he hadn't played it before, he had to do the kind of tutorial thing. he was getting super confused because he doesn't use that much VR. And I was like, if I could just have put him straight into the plane shooting and skip all this, and then it was like when I did that, getting into a multiplayer like lobby was kind of, it felt a little bit like convoluted. And I think part of that comes with this being one of those kind of games that enthusiasts tend to go towards, because it is that kind of game. Flight sims tend to be like that. But I don't know. I think there could be some improvements made to like the kind of onboarding / UI process, just to kind of make it like easy to jump in, and also because this is one of those games where you get pretty sick pretty quickly, right? Like if you're not used to it. So it's kind of like by the time I did the tutorial, I was like, oh, now I'm feeling a bit sick. I just want to jump in for like a 15-minute kind of thing. So I don't know. That was my only, and I only say that because it also looks like the kind of sequel where everything might just kind of stay the same, and it'll be like
it does
World
for
War
sure.
II change.
And that is something that Ultra Wings has over it. Like the opening levels of Ultra Wings are way more about just slowly easing you into the action.
Yeah,
like you have to pass flight tests for every
because I played a few of those
ones
get in the game on Quest. Yeah, and it was like you had to kind of do all the little bits. It was good. Yeah,
exactly. So it's way more of a first time flight experience. I think you're right that this is kind of like the flight nerds kind of more kind of game. Like they're going to recognize the models of the planes and
they
everything.
They would know
like
the trailer from the other trailer. They'd be like,
well,
that's
exactly,
blah blah plane.
Yeah, and they're gonna realize, they're gonna pick up on all the little intricacies and authenticities that are gonna be between the different craft, which is great. It's one of those like super fantastic niche things, but still niche things. But it's just the Quest needs these kinds of games because and VR in general needs these kinds of games because these are the things that VR does so well.
It also feels like, to me, this is like a good sign that we're kind of speeding up the sequel, like the interval between sequels. Like I totally wouldn't have expected this to come out anytime soon if you'd asked me. Similar to, I think, a bit, gives me the same kind of vibe as the whole Walking Dead sequel situation, or not sequel, not sequel. But like it seems like, devs are kind of being like, okay, we can put something out, put another thing out quickly. And the time between releases seems to be kind of getting shorter, I think, especially recently.
Speaking of games that come out in a very short amount of time over and over and over again, there's going to be an officially branded NFL VR game coming to Quest and PSVR, which is kind of crazy to me. This is kind of like a big signal that we're getting somewhere and people are paying attention, right?
Yeah.
This is in the same way we get an annual Madden NFL. I don't know if I'm saying any of this right because I'm from England.
But yes.
Game from EA. It looks like we're going to start getting like a proper football experience that's officially licensed from some famous people that know what they're talking about better than me.
It's the officially licensed part that's the only one of the only things we know / important part of the announcement. I mean, that's pretty big because there are a few like American football, NFL type games on the. There was also that one I could not remember his name, but there was the one that was based around a certain player who was really good. This is you can tell we're both not American here, but that certain player who was really good in the NFL. Someone in the comments will know, I'm sure. And then there was also the other like 2MD. I think kind of looked a bit like QB. That's had loads of updates. I think we've like. I haven't played it because I have no idea how American football works, but I've seen that
every
has got
Super
a lot
Bowl
of updates.
They do something, for sure.
Yeah, I literally turn on the Super Bowl to watch the halftime show every year, and then I turn it off. Or like leave it on mute, and I'm like, I have no idea what's happening, but it looks like ad gaps. It looks like they're not playing very much.
I don't even do that because I'm asleep. But and the thing is, though, I don't understand the rules of the sport whatsoever, but. I know it would be very, 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 very hard to do in VR, right? You're going to have to get really good throwing in there so that people aren't just like frustrated with like being off the mark all the time. You've also got the physicality of the sport to try and replicate. And
it's a lot of running.
There's a lot of running, and it's a lot of running into each other as well, right?
Yeah.
And the bit where you
put the ball down.
You jump, you touchdown. This is a VR touchdown.
Isn't it? correct me if I'm wrong, commenters, but I'm pretty sure a touchdown you don't have to put the ball on the ground, do you? You just have to catch it in the touchdown area.
Oh, do you?
I think so. I think you just have to walk in there. Like rugby
Clearly
and stuff, you have to put it down. That's what you're probably thinking of.
Well, I'm
but
not
I could be
qualified.
totally
Yeah,
wrong on that front too. So some American, I'm sure.
I'm from England, but I also don't know anything about rugby either. So basically, we just shouldn't cover sports.
Is there any sport? Is there any sport you watch / enjoy, Jamie?
I watch an occasional game of tennis.
Yeah.
Do you remember slam ball, which was like basketball, but they had trampolines at either end of
this
the
does
court?
Not count. Yes, I do. I do remember that.
It does count. Of course, it counts. When in my younger days, when it was on some like garbage TV channel in the middle of the day, I used to watch that intensely. There you go.
Yeah,
Where's the slam ball VR game? That's what I say.
Yeah, just give me a mini trampoline that my Quest can track. Tracks trampoline support. Yeah.
Oh my god. Coming up in the next version of. Anyway, let's move on from that. Otherwise, we'll just embarrass ourselves further. Before we move off of the news, I'd like to put in a little plug for GDC stuff we're doing this year. Or I shouldn't say we're doing. I should say the great guys at Beyond Reality, Between. I've got to stop doing that. Between Realities are doing. Alex and Skiva are on the show floor in San Francisco for us in the Moscone Center or Moscone Center. As you can see on the screen behind me, this is Alex from Between Realities. Talking to a bunch of devs and catching up, getting some cool quotes and comments, seeing what's new with them. And we've had day 1 wrap up, day 2 wrap up. We've been speaking to the developers of Moss. We've been speaking to the developers of Raid for the Oblivion Afterlife and a whole bunch of other Zenith again, or Zenith can never escape that. And it's good content. We have another wrap up video coming out later today. I'll be editing afterwards. And it's been it's a good time to do this because it's a very weird reintroductory GDC where it doesn't seem like much is happening this year, but it's cool to have a place where the VR community is all kind of in one spot to talk to, right?
Yeah. I also did kind of laugh at when I was watching this morning the wrap up with the Moss devs, and I feel like the Moss devs, every time we hear them comment on whether it's coming to other headsets, the answer is getting progressively like closer to just it's happening soon. Like at first it was like it's exclusive, and then this morning it was like, well, we're launching on exclusively, we are working on other headsets, we'll get it as soon as possible. It's like, so what, is it coming next week? Like
it's
what's happening there?
Just say you have a 3-month exclusivity window already.
Yeah.
It's that's just the way it's going to go with that.
So there you go. Totally. Moss probably, likely, very likely other platforms at some point.
It's just absolutely happening. We don't have to do the PR bluster.
No,
it's coming. Moss is coming. Don't write in the comments of the review next week like, shame this isn't on Quest, because it's going to be on Quest. All right, and it's going to be on PC. And if it's not,
it'll be like 3 months.
Sue me.
3 or 6. What's your bet? 3 or 6 month?
I think 3 months it'll be on Quest 2. 6 months it'll be on PC.
Or maybe I guess
maybe they say PC for like the PSVR 2 launch or whatever, because that's almost certainly happening as well. Like you're just not going to. Yeah. The thing I'm interested to know with Moss is when it comes to PSVR 2 and everything like that, are they going to remaster the first 2 games and just call it Moss Chapters 1 and 2?
Moss, because that's
that would be great. Yeah, that would be great.
Moss.
That's entirely what I want.
12.
Moss and the Chamber of Secrets.
Moss on the Goblet of Fire.
Cool. Yeah. So absolutely head to our YouTube channel and check that out, and more to come throughout the rest of the week from Between Realities. Let's move on to our impressions for the week. I've got 2 to fast fire off first. The first being a preview of Mothergunship Forge, which I think is a fantastic name. This is from a developer called Terrible Posture Games, and I've been calling it a wave shooter, but it's also kind of it's a roguelite wave shooter in that you know how in like Hades you have like those different rooms where you kill all the enemies before you can progress to the next room.
Love that.
So this is the same thing of you stand on this small platform that you have here, you move room to room, robotic enemies come at you, they fire obstacles, it's kind of a bullet hell thing, so you're slowly dodging out of the way of everything, and then also getting better upgrades. If you die, start all over again. and build up a new system. And so initially I started playing, and on the screen here you can see I'm just going through the tutorial thing, and it's like, oh yeah, punch the robot dogs. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can't move. I'm just punching the robot dogs. This is a wave shooter in 2022. This is going to be a bit of a letdown.
We're ready to write it off.
Yeah. Then you get introduced to the game's customization system, which is you have two basically wrist-mounted gauntlets, and on either of those you could attach a gun part. But what you could do instead, which I think I'm about to do, here in the video, is you get these connectors, and you can think of those as kind of like the counting squares you used to have in like kindergarten lessons, where like you'd have like little cubes that you could stick onto each other. Just maybe. If you were trying to help you count.
Yeah.
You can imagine the concept.
In England,
cubes that stick together to help you count.
Yes, sure, yeah.
That's what these are, basically. And so once you stick one of those on, you'll have two ports that you could put a gun part to or an upgrade part to. You could have that
I see where you're going now.
It could be like front facing, so that you're just pointing your wrist forward like I am.
Oh, so you can really put it like any way you want?
Yeah, like where there's like a circle, a blue circle, that's where you can stick it to.
You can have it like horizontal or vertical or...
Yeah.
Cool.
So it's entirely like that. So as you're playing, like if you want to like, you can do it just like have everything front facing, but if you want to get like stuff firing from multiple directions at once, then you want to like stick it to the side or something like that.
Make your own little gun arm. Yeah.
And immediately, as soon as I started getting involved with that system, I was like, oh my God, this is absolutely amazing. What a cool idea. Because you're not just, so many wave shooters don't like, it's like the baseline for me that if you're playing a wave shooter, you should at least make me focus on aiming so that I'm like intensely in the experience. You can't have that thing where I can just play by holding my hand down at my hip and just like rotating my wrist. This is just entirely different. This is, okay, up here, bend the wrist down, turn to the side, dodge out the way of this bullet. It's such a physical, active experience. And then on top of that, you've got, all you'd expect from a roguelite. So permanent upgrades, the more you gather crystals, randomized runs where you're going to find different gun parts every time, boss encounters, and everything like that.
Is it like Hades where you like clear a room and then you get like a new thing at the end of the room?
Yeah, it's on like literally right here. You choose
that's what's happening. So it's like every room.
Yeah.
That sounds really cool. I might give that a try because I hadn't seen the footage. I read the piece. I was like, oh, cool, the gun changing thing. But this looks quite cool. This looks cooler than I expected. And fun.
And so then, in terms of like it being a wave shooter, like it kind of plays like a wave shooter in each of these rooms. But if you look at the level design here, you're going to get like guns on this rotating big wheel here, and sometimes they're on pillars, which means they're kind of like hidden from view every once in a while. You're not just getting like a standard flat plane where a bunch of enemies are just running towards you. You've actually, in a lot of the environment design, got a lot of verticality and everything like that as well. So it's actually quite a dynamic and interesting experience just in that context of a wave shooter as well. So I'm very hopeful for this. I think it's going to be a really, really fun roguelite. I think we've got a great roguelite in Until You Fall and in Death, obviously. I think Sweet Surrender is a good roguelite, but I don't think we've got a great shooter roguelite yet. And I feel like this could be it.
So this isn't out yet?
No, this is coming June 16th to Quest 2 and
it's a while away.
Yeah, it was announced
actually
on
some time to like promote the game, unlike every other game recently. It's just
exactly.
Like, surprise, it's here.
So refreshing,
and you didn't even know what it was.
So as you see here, right now, I've got a connector with 3 points and a connector on top of that. So I've got two weapon parts and upgrade
like Lego.
Part. Yeah, and it's just it's like, why didn't someone think of this before?
Yeah, it seems like so obvious, right? Like, why didn't? Can you change it on the fly? Can you like midway through a room? You can just grab it off and rearrange it.
I think you can do it midway through a room. I haven't tried midway through a room, but certainly once it's over, you can definitely pick it up.
That's very cool. Very, very cool.
Yeah. So Mothergunship is a flat screen game originally. This is kind of a reimagining, like a spin-off, not like a sequel or anything like that.
Yeah.
With the same idea, but obviously on a flat screen, you're like, that's cool. But and it's like very impressive. Almost. But the idea really comes alive in VR to me. And what I'll be really interested to see is, as you're playing on Quest 2, especially how big those creations can get. Because if I can create these giant, ridiculous things, that's going to be really, really special. But obviously it's mobile hardware. So who knows if that's going to be massively
If you
possible.
have like 2 guns or 3 guns on your gun thing and you shoot it, does it shoot all 3 at once? Like, how does it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
okay,
like one trigger
cool.
will operate both guns on the respective arm.
Yeah,
So,
that's cool. Yeah. Awesome.
It's really, really cool. I am looking forward to seeing more of that. The other thing to talk about from me this week is another game that I'm very, very, very fond of, which is Tentacular, the new game from Devolver Digital and Fire Punch, which is a one-man development team. We've talked a little bit about Tentacular in the past. You are a tentacled beast that lives amongst our island community, and so it's a kaiju game, and you think, okay, well, you know what you're going to do. You're going to smash up buildings, throw people around, and everything like that. The game is interestingly not that concerned with that kind of low-hanging fruit. You are a friendly tentacled beast, as you just saw in the trailer there. You turn 16, and so the community decides you need a job. And what you end up doing is basically spending the game trying to find like the right fit for you. It eventually transpires that there's a lot of R&D scientists on the island for some reason, and you get involved with a lot of the work they're doing. So you have these two tentacled sucker things where it's all very, very concentrated physics. If you pick up a heavy object at the end of a tentacle, you're going to have a very elasticated, very inaccurate grip of it, but you can also like bring your like much thicker side up and grab it.
I hadn't really considered that yet.
Yeah, so it teaches you.
I was sitting on a lounge, playing on a lounge, just like being like, woo.
It teaches you that a little later into the game. Yeah, so it's not just that thing where like there's like games like Octodad where it's like, or Goat Simulator where it's like, oh, it's so hard to play, and or Surgeon Simulator where it's just like, oh yeah, all the controls are really, really bad, and thus it's really, really fun to just
kind of
make
intentionally
disasters.
Bad. Yeah.
There is actual intricacy here, and what happens is, and what you're seeing in the trailer is, as you get further into the game, it introduces new kind of physical elements. So a lot of the scientists want like constructions built, and to do that, they give you these kind of semi-useful magnets that are still quite weak, but like imbalanced, but make for this like really fun kind of like Jenga kind of wavy tower, completely structurally obscene mini game where you have to build stuff and balance things on the top. And then you also have like some different things, like you'll get rockets where you can like pull the pin and like fire them through hoops and things like that. And it's one of those things where I can totally get why some people will take a look at the trailer and be like, nah, not for me. But I really think everyone should try Tentacular, because similar to how you just got into Boneworks or Walking Dead and you had loads of fun with the physics, or Gorn is probably actually the best comparison, which is also published by Devolver. You just get into this world and start playing with all these kind of tiny elements and just having a ridiculous amount of fun. And it's such a tactile experience. So when people are talking to you, they have these word bubbles above their head, and you just kind of you just tap them on the head.
You tap them on the head.
Skip through.
Just a little tap.
And the haptic touch you get from that just feels so precise and on point. And it's very much a game about making you feel like you really do have those two tentacles as much as possible.
Yeah, totally, it is. Yeah,
I'm amazed at how accurate and authentic a simulation, or as accurate and authentic a simulation as playing as a giant mythical beast can be.
Yeah, but it feels really good. The tentacles feel fantastic.
Yeah, they really do,
and heaps of fun to use.
It must have been like the development for this game must have just been polish, fine tune, because very rarely have I got stuck in an awkward spot where I'm like, oh, okay, game didn't game properly right there. The problems I have with it are, and I don't know if you've found this yet, it's very, very talky. So even though you've got that cool little tapping thing, the characters just keep on talking. It's like, okay, I get that you want to do a fun little story, and the animation and the art style and everything is absolutely adorable. I'm a huge fan of what I like to call train set VR. I think it's the most convincing thing when you have a little diorama and you believe these are little action figures playing out in front of you. But it keeps talking. You're like, yeah, I know, but I want to go knock something over now, please.
Yeah.
And then there are some game types, like sometimes it wants you to throw like rockets through rings and stuff like that are really, really hard, basically. And I think they pad out the game in an unnecessary way.
Right.
But you can, for that, you can add in a help system so that if you're struggling to throw the rockets, you just talk to this kind of reset guy, and he'll put
I liked the reset guy.
Have you tried the elasticated electric lines yet?
Yeah,
Or,
I've tried the lines. Yeah.
They use it as a slingshot. You can, like, as a help mode whenever you're struggling with any of the throwing stuff, you can have that put in there to give you some accuracy as well. So you never actually end up getting stuck. But yeah, it's just a really, really fun, gorgeous, sweet, funny little playground. And I know there's going to be some snobbery around the fact that it's just a silly game or whatever, but I really suggest you dive in and have a go for yourself.
Actually doing it compared to seeing this, right? Like, because you see this as one thing, and I don't think you really get it really feels like, because the odd kind of thing too is that your controllers are here and the tentacles go out really far from, it's not like your hand is at the end of the tentacle, which you might think, based off the tentacles extend past where your controller ends. So you get this real kind of like, I think that goes a long way to it, making you feel like, not that it's like uncontrollable, but it's like controlled chaos, in that like it's this weird extension of your hands, but it really feels like you have there's something about the way they interact with everything that makes it feel like it's kind of an extension of your arm.
Controlled chaos is a great way to put it. Like, because like I said, because you can use the different lengths of your arm as well to have a different level of control or tactile feedback.
It's not just like imprecise because it's badly designed, right? Like it's imprecise in a very specifically designed to be an imprecise way.
And if you, I think if you have played Gorn, the best way to kind of get an idea of how it feels is some of the longer one-handed weapons in Gorn. Like if you were to take them to a wall and like push them against the side of a wall, you see that elasticated effect of where it, like, the end of the weapon stretches and it's kind of like an almost rubbery effect. That's kind of exactly what you've got here, but as arms. And that in itself leads to some really brilliant moments where, like, if you just bring your arm up and it's like next to a platform, the tentacle is going to like drag along the platform, then flick when it gets to the top, and you might accidentally hit like a human and just watch them go flying. Then and to the point of the kaiju thing, you can do all that. It's there to like smash around and have fun with, and it won't punish you for doing any of that. It's then got really funny, thoughtful applications of it elsewhere. One of my favorite missions in the game so far is called Dollhouse, and you go to the mayor's house, you open it up like a proper dollhouse, and then there's the silhouettes of objects you've got to put in a dining room, and it's just a very small dining room where you have to get like magnets in place to hang up like a chandelier and a painting, whilst trying not to knock
everything over that's already there,
like little chairs and everything. And if you do, then putting those back in place. So it's in the course of, like, I think what's probably a 3 to 4, maybe more hour campaign, you find yourself in that. It's one of those VR games where you find yourself doing all these funny hand poses, like raising your arms above and I think, man, if people are walking past right now, they're going to think, what the heck am I doing?
There's the bit in the lighthouse where you put the wrench in to like turn it. And that was like, I found that so difficult to do, not because like, it was just, I was like, oh, I have these tentacle arms. How do I get this in? And it didn't feel like bad, like frustrating. It felt like, oh, I have to learn how to hold things differently because I am a tentacled monster. Like, it just felt, it didn't feel like it was frustrating because it was like, this isn't working well and I'm trying to put it in. It was like, oh, I've got to like actually consider that I have tentacles. How would I hold? It's so interesting.
So the thing that I kind of like ended up comparing it to a lot was, when you do, like, when you were a kid, you did summer camp games where it was like, oh yeah, here's some bottles and some ropes and some sticks. Build a raft or build a bridge exactly, that's going to hold like a watermelon or something like that. That is exactly what it feels like. These like silly, fun, hard to do, but absolutely possible games that just play around with the craziness of video game physics. And I think it's a real winner. I'm going to give it a recommended for sure, because obviously it's not like the most defining VR epic you're ever going to play. But I think it's just a real joy of a little VR game, and I really recommend you give it a try if you're all interested in the kind of fun, silly, physical side of VR.
Yeah, I think too. Just to go back to what you said about the talkiness, which I haven't played nearly as much as you have, but the one thing I at least appreciated about this was that because you have, not only do you tap them to get them to talk, you can tap them to make them skip the conversation. So they're saying something and you're like, I'm sick of this. You can just like tap them 10 times, which again is something you should like, ideally don't have to do. But at least you have that, and you've also got things you can kind of, muck around with at all times while they're saying things to look at.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like, it feels less like you're just standing in a room, the kind of, I feel like I've talked about a lot of games in the last month where you're just standing talking to a life-size NPC, not even talking, just listening. Whereas here it's a bit like, I can kind of control the speed of this. You can also turn the talking speed, like the text speed up in the settings. You can turn that right up so it goes really fast. Like at least they're kind of, I feel like they're aware of the and some people might not want to be sitting there just so they've given you options. Yeah.
It's also not like there's no voice acting. It's all blah, 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 which is a good way of, and then in the word bubbles, it's just these giant words. So they don't have to be directly in your view. You can kind of see it's still really, really, really clever design. I just still would have taken every script and been like, or every bit of dialogue and been like, okay, how do we half this? Exactly.
Totally.
Because when you need to be reminded of what an objective is, for example, you tap them and they say, okay, let me repeat this, then go through the entire stack again. It's like, no, I could have tapped you and you could have just in one word bubble done a little list of what I need to do again.
Throw.
Exactly.
Destroy.
But yeah, that's Tentacular. I think it's really, really good. I'm looking forward to seeing what other people. I think, I mean, I'll just say I think it's spectacular with no pun.
There you go.
That's a game that transcends
the little
puns.
Voice. That little voice at the end whenever you finish a puzzle, it's like Tentacular.
Yeah. Oh,
that's always
so many cool little things.
The little things.
Like the hot air balloon showing up and you pull the switch to move on to the next level.
It's so much fun.
It's such a breath of fresh air in terms of like someone coming and being like, no, this is a VR game and everything has to be no laser pointers, no like
everything like
menu
snaps,
systems,
clicks, like
It
feels like the equivalent of getting a box in real life that has a really good switch on it, and you just can flick the solid switch. It feels like that for VR. It feels like everything just has it just clicks and falls and has weight to it, and like nothing feels wrong. It's just there's something about it. The little things.
So well done, Fire Punch, well done, Devolver. Keep making VR games for us, please, because this was a really, really lovely one. Harry, you've been playing. Yes. Which one do you want to start with? You want to start with Startenders?
Let's do Startenders. Yeah,
cool.
I've played a little bit of Startenders. I played, as far as I can tell, there is, I think, from memory, from what I can see at least on the menu, it looks like there's like 13 levels. But there could be more after that. I don't know. Maybe you get to 13. It's like, here's another 13. I don't know. From the main menu on the campaign thing, I can see 13. I've played through like 4, so like not that many. But this is an interesting game. It's a bit like your kind of Overcooks or Cookout in that it's like a different setting, but it is the same thing. It's you have customers who come to the bar, they order drinks, you have to put together combinations of stuff before they get kind of annoyed. The quicker you do it, the more tips you'll get. There's this other element that's on the screen now where as you get more tips, you can buy other machines, upgrade your existing machines, they go faster, buy ingredients. So there's a few things. There's like a hub world as well, like a part of your ship. I think the story is like your ship rocks up to the bar. So you're in your ship, and each campaign level you drive up to this bar, park it there, and serve drinks. There's a hub world in the ship where you can like make the new machines, upgrades. You get gifted things. A lot of the hub stuff I haven't really got to or been as involved with. It doesn't seem to have like come up as much so far. But I think the idea is basically that you could, buy a bunch of stuff, play through stuff again, do better. Or there's other modes as well. There's a daily mode where I think everyone competes for the same kind of daily thing and you get a high score. But it's interesting because it's not, I just kind of came away being like, okay, it feels like solid and good, kind of familiar. There are a few things that spice it up. Like what was interesting was that I got to like level 4 and I was serving some customers, and they were like, "We need these things," and I was like, "I don't have those ingredients." And I think that was purposeful of like, the game will not tell you, "Oh, you need to buy this thing now." You'll be like, "Oh, I now I'm lacking a couple of things. I just forgotten to upgrade stuff or whatever." So then I could go back the next time, buy them, and come back with the stuff, knowing that, I was up to the part of the game that wanted those ingredients or whatever. The one thing I will say is it is very like good with and I know this is something they said, I think in an interview on the PSVR blog, all of the like interactions are kind of designed for VR in that, they're levers, they're putting things, pressing buttons. It's very much like you're not having to press many buttons or do things that don't feel like they're actions, which is good. But there is something about it that feels a little bit like a few years ago. And I can't really, I can't put my finger on it because there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's kind of the visual style to me looks a little bit dated now, or a little bit, I don't know if it's dated or simple or something. There's something about it. I'm like, I don't know. It's kind of what I said earlier, where I was like, I feel like the bar has been set for what we can do with like, I wouldn't even call it simple art styles on Quest or like PSVR, but like, within the limitations of those systems. And it feels like this is like, I don't know, maybe visual style could have been a little bit more interesting, but but it's all serviceable. Like, I'm sure you'd have a fun time if you love Overcooked, Cookout, those kind of games. You will like this. It's the same kind of thing. There's nothing, wrong about it. It does a few different things. What I like to is a bit of management to the customers that come up. You have to like thumbs up them to get their order. Then you have their order and you have to make it. And there's 2 separate timers. So if you're making a drink and someone wants to place an order, you can kind of push them off a little bit by like not giving them the thumbs up, then give them the thumbs up, then you get the order, the timer starts. A little bit more management. I imagine it gets way more hectic later in the games. It didn't feel that difficult, to be honest, the first couple of levels. I feel like I kind of cruised through them because I'd played other games like this. So like it's interesting. It wasn't like good. I was like, yeah, this is good. It is good, but it's not bad. I don't know. It was kind of like, yeah.
Well, so I'm glad you said that, because that's the exact thing I was going to go for. This is going back to last week and the introduction in a new review system. This is exactly that kind of ground we're operating in when we don't give a game a label, right? Because it's not bad, but we've seen it all before. But the things it does are quite good, but it's entirely unoriginal. But if you're playing it for the first time in VR, you might think it's the best thing of all time. If you've already played Cookout and everything like that, then you're probably not going to want to bother with it. And it's just like this massive gray area of people that are all
if you like this kind of game,
very different way.
You will probably enjoy it. That's,
exactly.
That's the crux of it. There's nothing inherently, like, it does all of the things that it should do for that genre, if not more as well, because there's a few other things to spice it up. As I said, I've not played through the full campaign, full disclosure, but it's one of those things where I feel like I played it like enough of it, and I was like, yep, this is doing everything it needs to do right. If I wanted to play more of this, I'm sure it would continue those things right. The only other thing was like the hub world to me felt a bit like, I don't know. I didn't feel like I needed. Yeah, it didn't feel like I didn't need to go there. Didn't want to be there. I was like, I just want to play the levels. I don't need to walk around this kind of ship. And the teleporting is a little bit like, that's one of the things that feels a bit dated. In that, like, there's just a couple of teleport points. There's not even really like a selector to select them. You just point in the direction and press, and it goes there. And sometimes you go to the wrong spot and little things like that. But yeah, if you like this kind of game, if you loved Cookout, this is. I think I said in my little like impressions piece, this is essentially like single player Cookout, in that it kind of amps up the complexity in certain ways to account for the fact you're only playing with one person, not multiple people. So yeah, it's interesting. Like I had a cool time with it. It is what it is. That's
it is what it is. That's I mean, that's the best way to say it. And it's Quest 2 and PSVR now, and
PSVR,
is it PC as we?
I think PC's coming later. It's on Steam. You can wishlist it on Steam, but it doesn't have a like release date yet. It's just when it comes out on Steam, it'll come out on Steam. So yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
Second thing to talk about on your end, I think, is probably the way more interesting thing, which is Piano Vision.
Piano Vision, yeah, super interesting. I've been trying to like get to this for a while, and I finally got to it today. I put this video together today. Super cool. So we've tried a lot of these apps before on Quest, where essentially it's like AR piano. But the first ones that ever came out, you didn't have the past review because that wasn't possible yet. So you had like a virtual piano you'd line up to your real piano, which felt kind of odd because you couldn't really see what you were doing. It was relying on hand tracking, which back then was also worse. And if you were in a VR world, playing your real piano was kind of a bit like disorientating almost because it didn't quite match up. This is like the final form of all of these types of apps we've seen. There's been a few of them. This one is by far the best I've tried. I tried it. My housemate who also plays piano tried it. We were both like, that's really cool. And basically it uses pass-through you calibrate it to your piano and align it. It doesn't do that automatically, but it's fine. It's a very easy process. Then it's got these classical songs that are obviously all public domain in them as like, standard songs you can do. This is Clair de Lune. You can't hear it on the video, obviously, but it is Clair de Lune. But the real kicker of this one, because it's the best version of this app, but like even without the kind of killer feature, like the kind of calibration, the way it looks, all of that's great. But the thing that really sets it apart is you can plug it into a MIDI keyboard or piano, which I obviously have. So you plug it into your computer. The computer has a desktop app that connects wirelessly to Quest, and then it can tell when you have or haven't played a key. It knows what you're doing, basically. Cool. So you can see here I'm lining up the chord because I couldn't get to it in time. So it stops the notes until you hit the right stuff. So it is like a proper way to learn. Previous ones that didn't have this functionality, the notes would just keep going and you'd be trying to keep up, or you'd have to pause it, and there was no way for the app to tell what you'd done. It was just kind of like a guide. Whereas this is interactive. This is, if you do the wrong notes or you haven't got the notes in time, it won't progress until you press them. Or sometimes I would play the right hand and go, oh, why isn't it moved? Oh, I've missed a note in the left hand, stuff like that. Yeah, it kind of is amazing because I think this works so well now. I just go, man, this is going to be amazing in a couple of years' time.
And is it that on the screen we're seeing on the left-hand side there's red notes and on the right-hand side there's right notes? And is that telling you which hand to play
Which hand to use, yeah.
Yeah. And what about the white notes? Like these kind of...
So that's black and white notes on the piano. So
of course,
the black is like, that's a black note. The white is, that's a white note on the piano, which is, I think, done because at first I was getting a bit annoyed because it says A and the sharp is on the bottom, whereas traditionally in any music you'd read A sharp. But then I realized it's actually just using the black and the white to quickly denote that, because you can easier to see that the color than to read the kind of sharp or flats. I would still prefer if the sharp was next to it because it's kind of easier that way. But yeah, so it's basically, you can also put your own MIDI files into the desktop app and upload them to Quest. It is fairly specific though, because it needs to be like a piano MIDI file with just 2 tracks. I got like one to work. And also these days it's very, very hard to find MIDI files without like paying a bunch for subscriptions to stuff. But gone are the days where YouTube was filled with like piano tutorials and endless MIDI files. But if you have piano MIDI files on hand, you can put them straight into this. They'll come up, which is pretty cool. It's just amazing. Like to me, it's one of those things where you look at the video like this, you go, oh, it mustn't be that good. Like can't, but it really was like, it feels great to use. I feel like I could use it to actually learn. I'd played a bit of Clair de Lune in the past, never learned it properly. And there was certainly bits where I was like, wow, it's amazing to be able to see this, like visualize it as it happens compared to sheet music. The only thing I will say is that people always, I think, when they see these things, especially if they don't play the instruments, are always like, oh, well, what's the point of even having teachers anymore? And it's like, this doesn't replace, there's a whole bunch of stuff this doesn't replace. Like you need technique, you need music theory. Like this, I think in the piece I've written, I've said this will show you the notes. It doesn't tell you like how to play them or what to do with them or what they mean. Like just because you know to play the notes in sequence doesn't mean, once you understand a piece, music theory wise, you'll play it much better. You need to know technique, dynamics, how to properly position your hands so you don't injure yourself, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There's none of that. And I think one day maybe we'll get apps that can do that. Maybe, but that's also, those things are way more subjective. So who knows? But it doesn't replace like lessons. Like you still need to, and it would help if you played piano. It would also help if you know the songs that you're trying to play on this. I've played a few where I didn't even know them well. It doesn't work that well because this isn't really a great indication of rhythm. Like it works and it tells you when to release, but it's not giving you any kind of, especially because it stops and starts. It's hard to tell like how long a note's meant to be or what it's meant to sound like rhythm wise. So I think it's designed for like a certain, and it's designed for certain circumstances of like, oh, I know this song like Clair de Lune. I've maybe played it a few times, I think, and I'm going to dive in and try and play it now, knowing what it sounds like. If you didn't know what Clair de Lune sounds like, I think you'd have a hard time.
Yeah.
You get something close to it, but it'd be hard to get the specifics of like, the rhythm, especially with more complicated stuff. But it's absolutely amazing. It's in early access now. It's kind of like a closed early access. You can go to the Piano Vision site and sign up, and I think you'll get sent I'm not sure if everyone gets access or if it's a certain amount of people, but It's in early access. There's a desktop app for PC and Mac. And what's amazing about this video, I think too, on a kind of different technical level, is this is like so many types of technology. I'm using hand tracking with the pass-through overlay with a Quest that's wirelessly connected to my computer over Wi-Fi, that's connected to a MIDI piano that is streaming the Quest footage back to my desktop in my bedroom using SideQuest to get the pass-through footage. It's using like 8 like cutting-edge technologies at once. It's pretty nuts to me that it even like worked. It's such an amazing feat. It was really cool to try. It's one of those things that I'm actually going to use probably outside, work hours. I'll be like, oh, I just want to check this on for 5 minutes and see how it works in this. It's so useful. Very interesting.
Yeah, it is super interesting. And it's interesting what you were saying about like, yeah, you still need a teacher, because the thing I did over lockdown was I picked up guitar and used the kind of Fender service they have, Fender Play, which was really, really good. But the thing that was best about that for me was it was actually a pretty accessible way to learn music theory, because as much as they did, here's the chord shape and here's the like song that you want to play, they also did, but before you do any of that, this is what a 16th note sounds like over and over again and stuff like that. And that you can totally see that coming to something like this eventually, though, right?
Totally.
Like, once we're at like Project Cambria level, and maybe you have someone like a little hologram of a person like sitting on top of the piano or something like that, talking you through all of that stuff. You're very right in that pause that disrupts the flow of rhythm is a great instrument to give you time to find your fingers, but you absolutely need to have a sense of the rhythm as well, and it's kind of
otherwise you kind of
to that.
And I think the idea is too, if you once you get good at the song and you just played it through, it wouldn't disrupt, so you'd be playing it in rhythm. But I think there's no way, I can't see a scenario where someone who doesn't know a song would eventually get to a point where they play it through just by learning it through this. The other cool thing is this has more kind of, I would say, UI and kind of gamey things to it than other versions of these apps that we've tried. Like for this, for example, when you're running through the piece, it'll tell you the time you ran through the entire thing start to finish in. So like for release, or not for release, but Claire de Lune for me was like 10 minutes or something. And then I did it again and it was like, oh, this time it was 9 minutes and 30 seconds. So you did a little bit faster. And so I think the idea is with that, eventually, you'd just be playing it at speed and you get it down to 5 minutes, or like it's not a high score system because it's not like play it as fast as possible, but it is like, well, you can work towards something. You can use it without a MIDI piano as well. You can like loop sections. So if you have like a certain part you want to practice, you can loop it. There's all different kind of options that you can dive into. And I imagine that will only get better. And I know there's some things, I don't want to say them because I don't want to know if they've been announced or whatever. I know there's some more, not music theory, but more like other features that involve, visualizing notes and stuff that are in the works for it. So yeah, I think it's super interesting. It's amazing that it works so well. It's one of those things where you play it and you're like, this is like, feels like cutting edge technology, like if you showed this to 5-year-old me, I'd probably lose my mind, who was like doing music theory lessons and completely disengaged. If some kid tried this and got more engaged with music because of it, that'd be so amazing, I think. So yeah, such a cool one.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how it progresses. Like you were saying, it's like such an interesting and potentially hugely beneficial avenue of all this stuff, just like VR fitness can be. So
yeah,
one to watch for sure. I believe that takes us to the end of this week's edition of the VR Gamescast. Thank you so much for watching. We're here every Thursday on YouTube, Spotify, all the other places that do podcasts. I just upload it to one place and trust it appears on a bunch of services, but I think it does. So that's great. Next week, we'll be back with some Moss 2 discussion, hopefully, because that's out, and Cosmo News High will be out next week, so we'll be talking about that as well. And we'll see you then. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. Have a good week.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.